Hey everyone, it's Dante, and I'm making a video. So I just need to speak from a place of real authenticity, vulnerability, transparency, and share my experience of this chapter of life and reality. And um, I guess the first thing I want to speak to is tying this into the collective. There is a lot surging to the surface right now. There's a lot of fear surging to the surface right now because of the escalations in the environment and the political situations. It's a really intense time, and what's really important is to not get swept up in the fear. Um, and let the fear emerge, let the fear rise to the surface and embrace it. Um, but don't believe the fear. And ultimately, our deepest fear is the fear of death. It's the fear of annihilation. And there's many fears that you could consider worse, like the fear of total separation while alive. And I think people are getting these fears stimulated because it seems like what's happening could destroy our life on the planet. And just speaking in, you know, a more real sense, the Earth is a very ancient being. The Earth is more powerful than us. There's nothing we can do to the Earth that will destroy it entirely. And while we will never experience the same Earth, because at this point, it's beyond the ice caps ever returning, they're melting, they're going to go away, the sea levels are going to rise, the temperature is going to increase. That's just going to be a different experience for us, along with many great changes to come. So, yes, there is destruction involved, though, many say from the Eastern traditions, it's the age of Kali Yuga, it's the age of destruction. So, along with a lot out there being destroyed, it's also our old patterns of fear and control that are coming to be destroyed. And I just really hope people use these moments as a way to, tap into what their passion is. And if you find yourself really affected by this, there's got to be something that you can do that you feel passionate about that is counter to all of the environmental problems. Like, it can be as simple as donating to environmental funds, it can be planting trees, it can be deepening your own relationship with the plant world, and it can be in getting involved in politics, but it doesn't have to be that. The truth is, as long as you are following your joy and your passion, you are creating a frequency by being in that state of passion that is adding to the collective frequency here. And so there's a lot of leaders and healers needed to keep the vibration stable in these times and not buy into the fear that much. Now, that being said, what this video is really about is a personal process for me, but I had to start with that because it seems really relevant today. And so I've come to Portland, Oregon. I got here in May, and I spent 3 weeks here feeling it out, scoping it out, and then I went on a series of many different adventures during the summer to different festivals where, well, not really festivals. I went to one festival. They were more small-scale gatherings, no more than 200 people, and I offered workshops at all of them. And it's been really beautiful, and it's also been really exhausting. I've been under pretty serious amounts of stress just from not having my own space and dealing with the uncertainty of how everything is going to fit together. and I made it this far, and I keep making the next steps, so that uncertainty does not really escape the background. As to live in this country, I have to make more money than I have been used to making in the past, and I don't know how that's going to look yet. And the flow of getting events set up here is not as quick and easy as it has been in a lot of other places around the world, despite me putting everything into bringing this forward in the best way. It is slow moving. So there's a lot of fear and uncertainty, and there's also this quite intense reaction to experiencing consumerism all around me, to seeing the way that this country works and the very dense state that many people are in. People believe that there's only one. People believe they have to conform to the ideas, the structures that society has taught them, and it's a really hard thing for me to grapple with. And I just work to really meet people where they're at, though when it comes to forming deeper connections, I feel like I'm seen in many different ways, mostly positive ways, though I don't really feel as if the sorts of ideas and assumptions and sort of perceptions people have about me are really capturing my full essence. So in that, there's a pretty deep feeling of being more alone. There's a feeling of being quite loved and welcomed here, and there's also just so many big fears emerging. I'm finding myself here for a variety of reasons, and most important is I just really needed to be with gay community after living so many years in these spiritual vortex bubbles. And while that has offered me this very beautiful life where I've been with people who had similar ideas about consciousness and were doing their inner work and were creating a life for themselves that was outside of the structures of society, so I felt much, not entirely outside of the conventional ways that people do that, I should say. And that was been very liberating, and there's been this like love and this welcomeness there, though there's always been this feeling of a deep loneliness because it has been such a heteronormative world and there's been so few gay people there. And especially seeing relationships and ideas about sexuality, tantra workshops and all of this stuff there, it has been really hard, and it's totally necessary for me to be within the context of gay community. And that said, it brings up a whole other layer of challenges, a lot of which have to do with how I relate to other people, with the fear of rejection, with sort of both sides of the fear of rejection, fearing rejecting others, fearing being rejected, and I'm working to embrace that, coming into the joy of rejection and just accepting everything as it is, though there's also an aspect of that is, I'm working against myself by not fully honoring how deep that fear is. And so the only thing that is working for me with all of these programs is this deep dive into accepting my own shadows, my own fears, my own really challenging emotions that are being triggered all the time. And there's this, back and forth into these really high states of love that people around me see me for, because I bring this energy that breaks the stagnation, that brings joy and celebration into the simple moments of life. And I know that's so much of what I'm here for. And I can channel that. And sometimes, like, the question that comes now is like, is that I'm moving away from being present with this deeper pain and listening to it? And I don't think that's always the case. I think the joy arises spontaneously, and it brings me into a rapture, though there is definitely there's something in the way between me and connecting with other people in the way that I really want to connect with them. And while I feel embraced by the community as a collective, I don't feel myself dropping into the deeper connections one-to-one with people that I would prefer. And social media has been like another type of escalation for me, in which, there's a schism in my realities, and there always has been. And it's almost at a point where I'm choosing sides now, because I've always felt like, being the gay person within the spiritual community, I may be welcomed, but I don't necessarily feel belonging and comfort. And being the starseed out there person within the gay community, I also feel welcomed, but not necessarily understood. And the beliefs and the things that I offer are not necessarily valued in the same way that I value them. And this has been it's so important I'm speaking now, because I haven't fully been able to communicate my ideas to people in either of these communities. And even people that I really respected and worked deeply with have, in a way, kind of invalidated my experience here and tried to give me a quick fix to it, when the reality is that I'm realizing more and more that I'm here both to bring big shifts to the spiritual community when it comes to issues of heteronormativity and understanding gay and queer sexuality, and I'm here to bring big shifts to the gay and the queer community in terms of spiritual understandings, non-resistance, accessing higher realities, and really tapping into our spiritual sovereignty and our connections beyond, which I don't feel that many people fully open to. And one challenge I face a lot is, even when I'm not super attracted to a man, I find that a little bit attracted, let's say. I find that their beliefs, their perceptions, their preconceived notions are kind of translated to me empathically. And instead of just being super firm with myself, it's like I chameleon or attempt to translate this information that I carry in a way that they can receive. But in doing so, I lose my essence, and I lose my confidence and my centering in what is really true for me. So it's just like a roller coaster all the time. And in the midst of this, it's like the scope of a city on top of like having this big social media presence. It's like it feels like there's so many threads that want my attention. There's so many people that want my attention. And there's so many possibilities that I could explore. There's so many avenues. And I just feel completely overwhelmed by it, because I want to make the best decisions, and I want to be, use all of my energy, channel it in the way that's really nourishing to me. But there's this invitation and that invitation. And I feel like I'm defaulting at saying no, but there's still this residual imprint of guilt in the no. I'm coming to embrace that. There's also this fear of FOMO, fear of missing out in the no, in some sense that if I do say no to this opportunity, I'm going to lose something. Though, a higher perspective is that, for one, there's nothing to lose, and two, when you say no to the things that don't fully resonate, then the things that do truly resonate can come to you and you can say yes to them. So, yeah. I also feel very challenged in, my persona with people, and if you know me, you're probably surprised by my videos and my writing because it's so serious and so succinct, so I don't know how to put it. My writing is really, it captures a different essence of me, with a lot of forethought, clarity, specificity in the wording, whatever. And when I'm out and about, I'm like a wild man to the extreme, and everything is a joke, and everything is a game, and dancing and frolicking around. This is the medicine that uplifts people and actually creates that energy field of joy and connection. And I understand and see that it's working in that, I don't feel like I've made any enemies in coming here. I feel like I've only made allies. I feel like the openness in my heart has brought people to really connect with me in a deep way, but I don't feel this deeper sense of respect. I don't feel that many people really understand the value of the journey that I have walked and the things that I have to offer. And it's like I have to affirm that to myself in bigger ways, but the contrast between what I have experienced being in the New Age bubble where, people were kind of thrilled and like blown away by the channeling and by what I offer, and here where there's maybe not quite so many people that it just clicks for and pops for right away, especially within the queer community. It's slower. I'm finding my own fear of rejection, my own stumbling blocks really slowing me from holding forth to the commitment to what I know to be true and who I know myself to be. And it's super hard. It's like really like a splitting in my worlds in a lot of ways. And while, I'm facing these challenges, on another hand, like, I'm having this experience of hanging out with heterosexuals, former, like, friends, that I've known for a lot longer than many new friends. It's really awkward, because I've gotten so used to the kind of social comfort and openness and wildness and the embrace of sexuality, sensuality more than sexuality, that I experience in gay and queer circles, than back with heterosexual people. Oftentimes I feel like they're very needy and they want something from me. Oftentimes I feel like I have to over-explain myself and my experience. Oftentimes I feel like I'm working to hold a space for them, and there's this like thing that's come up sometimes when there's certain queer and gay spaces that are exclusive that heterosexual people aren't supposed to come to, because of the awkwardness, because of the misunderstanding that happens, because we live in a world that is so heterosexual, and as a minority we need spaces where we can create the dynamics for ourselves. And straight people get really upset by oh, this is a place where I can't come, or it offends a deep part of them, and I just really hope when that is triggered in someone, they can really examine what it must feel like to actually be a minority who is excluded, who is faced with something that is so contrary to their energy system and circuitry all the time. And yeah, it's just a whole string of really different challenges. And I know that the journey that I've walked in developing these gifts and traveling the world and living the life I have has been necessary. Though, to be super honest, in terms of my sexual intelligence, in terms of my ability to like really relate transparently with men and, you know, nurture them, be nurtured, like have a real transparent experience, I feel like I am really far behind. I feel like I've lost years of development that, I mean, obviously it won't take too long to reprogram, but I feel like, you know, what I'm learning now, most people learned in their early 20s. Whereas I had a relationship, it was in the structure of a sort of monogamy outside of the context of a larger queer community most of the time. And that really distorted what a real dynamic in a gay relationship is. And I'm realizing that only in feeling a very different frequency come through within the gay community. And I've been reading a lot about the gene keys, and one thing it talks about a lot is the world population lowering through a natural transmutation of sexual energy into a higher spiritual energy. And I really believe that queer gay people, we are teachers of this. We are the first embodiments of this by using our sexuality for a purpose that is not reproductive. We are here to really embody and teach, you know, what those deeper degrees of love mean and how it's about breaking the structures of ownership that have led to monogamy and nuclear family and created very unhealthy dynamics where everyone is living for themselves and we've disconnected from community. In the past, I've had a lot of fear of this sort of communal degree of sexuality that I sometimes feel offered in certain spaces, and I'm coming to a point where I'm just learning more and more so, you know, how important that is, and to embrace that and to not be turned off by neediness and turned off by you know, lack of consent and hedonism and any other sorts of lower frequencies that can come through in those spaces. So, you know, this is like a culmination after 7 years of travel and study, and now I think what I'm learning is some of the most important stuff, and it comes back to the body's wisdom, the emotional wisdom, and being here I'm getting a lot more into my practice of yoga and back into my body. And in the past days there's been a lot of signs and this calling inside from my higher self to begin writing a book. And I wrote, you know, introductory chapters in the first chapter, and coming forward transparently in this book was a really like a deeply triggering process as well, where a lot of the, you know, the unprocessed stuff came up in a pretty big surge yesterday, and I had a ceremonial experience that almost led me to like feel like I was entirely breaking down and really needed to ask the world for some serious help. And I woke up and gave myself, you know, my morning little routine with food, chocolate, letting the day start naturally, and found that, you know, I don't necessarily need this big support from one person or something in that of that nature. What I really need is to just you know, fully honor the deep challenge of this experience and stay present with every fear and let all of this transmute just through being open in my sharing about it. And beyond, you know, a lot of my videos in the past have been about you know, trying to communicate these ideas that have brought me to where I've got so far, though I just feel like I'm in a process that's much more intense right now that I'm in the learning of it, and have the great capacity to offer spaces. And of course the channeling just comes through in a way that feels quite natural at this point, and I really have the ability through the channeling to step beyond my problems and beyond my conditioning to allow that higher wisdom to come through. And that comes through even now as I'm in my own process, though it's like this unification between the higher self and the lower self that I feel in the past I've been like, you know, my lower self was kind of hidden, whereas I would step into this flow of my higher self in order to be of service. And the cacao ceremonies, the moments of deep, you know, group intimacy, were experiences in which my higher self and my lower self merged. And now it's like I need every moment to be that sort of blending where there's no hiding of one aspect of myself to be in my higher self. And I think without going back and forth between fully ruled by the lower self, fully ruled by the higher self, and letting them merge, it'll be a lot easier. And this is a transparent share. I was just reading the gene keys about the gene key 59, transparency, and it speaks of Quetzalcoatl with that the birth of transparency in the human collective through our genes is akin to the return of Quetzalcoatl. And Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent in Mayan mythology, is a representation of that unification of the higher self and the lower self. Represented the serpent, the lower self nature, the bird, the higher self nature. And I also made a post recently about, you know, a reflection that it came up after a ceremony recently, a pretty intense share, speaking about shamanism and sorcery, reflecting back to Carlos Castaneda's teachings. I only read the last two books, The Art of Dreaming and The Active Side of Infinity, and these books were disturbing for me. It was very fascinating on some levels, though I couldn't really grapple with the teaching that the universe was predatory in its nature. And, you know, being more akin to the all is love, love and light, law of attraction, source has a plan for you, source is structured this way, feeling an understanding of the more primal, deep aspect of nature portrayed in that way scared me. And I've really seen how I myself have walked away, have tried to reject, push away that part of myself, and not even see that in nature and in human consciousness, the predatory nature. And I made this post that I'm ready to embrace that, and I think I noticed I always look at who responds and who doesn't, and a lot of the more spiritual people really did not go for that post, did not go for that. And I think I didn't write it in a clear enough way, being like, you know, yes, it is love and light and it's a predatory universe, because that is part of the paradox, because it just had to be this very deep recognition for me that this is true about reality and this is true about how energy works, and it's in our genes, and we are going to transcend that, but we're not going to transcend it through rejecting it. We're only going to transcend it through embracing it and noticing how those circuits of predatory universe activate within us, and calling that out in things that are happening right now in the political situations in the world and in the environmental situations of the world, and just in the ways that people act in general. So yeah, it's a really big time of huge shift. I'm really feeling grateful to be out of Leo season still, as someone with many signs in Scorpio and other fixed signs, including Chiron in Leo. Leo season is a doozy for me, so I'm still really processing and integrating all of the psychic stuff that was stirred up for me in Leo season, a lot of ego energies, and now in Virgo season, which is much more soothing to my chart, it's like this deep self-care, and in the background there's these fears and these worries like, how am I really going to make these things work right now? And my higher self is just like, be in the moment, be with what feels good right here, right now, again and again. And that's what I'm doing, that's what I'm working through and what I'm learning. So I have no idea how long I shared for, how long this video has been, but it's been a pretty good process for me to just put it out on the table and to see what evolves from this. And I'm just really praying that things will flow easier for me here to get my workshops started and the flow going, and for these deeper relationships to emerge, because I think that is, at the core of a lot of these feelings of disconnection, is that I haven't really felt in such a long time, like fully honored, fully received, and fully reciprocated within relationships. And sometimes I think that there's something wrong with me, which is of course not true, but there's some pretty intense things moving through my system, to say the least. And yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for watching. My website is still blissbeings.com. I am still working on making some changes to that structure, as in procrastinating on that, just because there's a lot of other things going on right now. But you can find me there, and I am available for channeling and healing sessions and all the good stuff. And if you have anything to share, I'd love to hear it. If you have any questions that I can speak to, I'd love to hear those too. Thanks for watching, and have the best day ever. Bye bye for now.